Hey everyone, today I'm doing a little bit of soldering and I just thought of this tiny little tip that I wanted to share with you. You can take it or leave it. It's very simple, but it's in regard to tinning the edge of your project. And what I'm going to show you that I do, what it does is it assists in the edge soldering process, if that makes sense. Hopefully it will when I explain it. But anyway, just hang out with me for a minute and I'm going to show you what I do. So I figured out how to deposit, I'd say about 50% more solder on the edges of a project where you would typically be tinning only. So what you actually see in this video is going to be somewhat nuanced because it's really hard to show that little bit of difference. However, I'm going to do my best to explain this. First, always apply a good amount of flux before you tin the edges. So I discovered that when I position the copper edge that I'm getting ready to tin, if I position it perpendicular to the iron, this helps to deposit a little extra solder, and I believe it's because the larger surface area of the iron tip is lining up with that very thin edge. So I realize that what you're seeing me do may look exactly the same as just tinning. You're not seeing a very thick bead forming because there's just not enough surface area on the edge to really create a big fat bead. But the reason that I find it helpful to deposit a little more solder on the edges is that I feel like it assists me when I'm beading the outer edge of the project, and I'll explain that in a moment. So in addition to holding the iron perpendicular to the copper foiled edge, I'm going to sweep the iron fairly quickly over the foil in an attempt to almost float the solder on instead of dragging the iron tip over the copper. Again, which is almost impossible to actually show you. But by doing this, the solder that lands on the foil almost creates a mini bead, whereas dragging it on the edge is going to just result in the bare minimum of solder. Ultimately, my goal is to increase the amount of solder on the edge ever so slightly because when I go to edge solder, this is going to assist in creating an almost U-shaped channel effect that you get like with hobby came. The beading on the outer edge is going to melt into the solder that you've deposited on the front and the back edges. And it's ultimately going to hug the edges and create a bead that you can see folding over the front and the back of the piece. By doing it this way, you will have more solder falling over the edge here and there, but that is absolutely fine. And it's actually going to make things a little easier on you when you go to edge solder because you're not going to have to make as many trips to pick up solder when you're working on that outer edge because you can just remelt that solder that overflowed. Hopefully you can see that there is a subtle difference, that there's a little bit more volume of solder on each piece, and it almost creates a little bit of an encased look for each one of these ornaments. Well, I hope that made sense. It was a little harder to explain than I thought it would be, but give it a try, or let me know if you've ever done this before, or if it's something that you have kind of figured out like I did, and let me know how it goes, and happy soldering. Bye guys.